my first couple of months at MoviePass when we were getting new customers in and we were getting returning customers. There were a lot of people who were complaining that they liked MoviePass 1 better. And it was always confusing to me because I'd read those emails and I'd be like, you preferred like the fraud? All of these people were like horribly defrauded. We'd be getting simultaneous messages of people who were really, really upset, and rightfully so, about putting their trust and their money into this company for it to kind of fall apart. And then to come back, we were struggling a lot with whether they customer expectations.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Experts of Experience. I'm your host, Lauren Wood. Super quick PSA before we dive into this episode. As we speak about customer experience on this show, we love customer feedback. And if you didn't know, there are two ways that you can share your feedback with your favorite podcast. One is subscribing to the show wherever you listen. And two, actually giving us feedback on the application that you use to listen to your podcasts. So please go on over there and let us know what you think. We would love to hear from you and keep bringing you expert CX knowledge to your eyes and ears. Today, I am speaking to Frances Molina, the manager of customer experience at MoviePass, a pioneering movie subscription service that is reshaping how audiences experience films in theaters. Frances brings her expertise in CX to discuss MoviePass's history and latest innovations in making movie access easy, fun, and affordable. I'm really excited to talk about MoviePass's journey and the future of subscription models in this ever-evolving landscape of cinema subscription services. We are clearly in an AI revolution, and thankfully, Salesforce is helping customers navigate each new wave of AI. But the question is, how do you actually use AI effectively? And my answer to you is, it starts with your data. With Salesforce's Data Cloud, you can connect, federate, and harmonize all of your data from any product and system in Salesforce. To learn more, visit salesforce.com/products/data. So Frances, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
So when I was doing some research about MoviePass, I landed on MoviePass's About page on your website. And I really want to read the first line of this because I think it tells a really clear story and an interesting history to where MoviePass has been and where you are today. So if you will all entertain me for just a moment, I want to read this first line. Dun, dun, dun. You might think you know the story of MoviePass, but chances are you don't. We could give you all the corporate gobbledygook about what our lawyers told us to say, but you deserve to know what really went down. And then it goes on to share how the business was bought by private equity at a certain point. The founders were ousted. A new pricing model drove the company into bankruptcy. And then it was repurchased by one of the original founders and brought back to life, which I think is such a wild story. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit about kind of your experience in that. I'm not sure if you were there during this tumultuous time, but you've definitely been there for the cleanup. So I would love to kind of understand a little bit of what happened there and how are you approaching customer experience today?
Yeah, it's having you read it back to me is it really resonates how cinematic it really is. Without actually, I think, intending to, you can kind of see this would make a really good movie, a la, The Social Network, or a la, Dumb Money, something like that. I think that's, it makes for a good movie going experience. But yeah, I wasn't there for what we kind of internally refer to as MoviePass 1, but I kind of came in kind of midway past the launch. So I think they launched MoviePass 2.0 in January of 2023. And at that point, we were kind of operating off of a wait list. So we didn't open nationwide until May of 2023, which is when I came in. I think I started at the end of May, and then the following week, we were opening nationwide. So I kind of came in right in the center of just the absolute madness. So everybody coming in from the wait list, everybody coming in just regularly signing up through the website or through the app, et cetera. There are only a couple of people who are, I think only one person currently on the team, who's the VP of product, who was there for the first iteration of MoviePass. And we like to joke that, he's essentially indispensable because he knows where all the bodies are buried. Like, he knows this code that built the app like the back of his hand. And he's just, I learned everything of how to do my job, certainly not the CX part of it, but how to navigate some of our internal systems and our tech stack. I learned it all from him. And he was just an incredible resource because he knew absolutely everything because he had built it. So, I, like you said, I kind of came in during not only the cleanup, but also in the, beginning stages of this new product that was now being available, being made available to everybody nationwide. So a very intense time, to say the least. I don't think there's such thing as a non-intense time at MoviePass.
Can you give us a little bit of context just on what like 1.0 was versus 2.0?
1.0, I think, kind of refers to the time before, Mitch and Ted. Those are the folks who ended up buying MoviePass and ended up driving it into bankruptcy. MoviePass 1.0 refers to the time before them. So when it was our current CEO and founder, Stacy Spikes, and his partner, they had started MoviePass. We're kind of building it from the ground up. It was really scrappy and very new and very exciting.
But the goal was to provide moviegoers with it was still a subscription service. I believe it was $10 a month, and you could go to as many movies as you wanted. Did I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's correct.
So
that
cool.
is MoviePass 1. So I think that model was, one of the reasons why MoviePass was so popular with consumers, and B, another way that kind of led to its downfall because it sounds too good to be true. And I think that the people who ended up coming in and taking over realized that, oh, we could make money off of how good this sounds.
So what turned into 2.0? How did the product and the offering shift?
I mean, the 2.0 it really started when Stacy Spikes, the current CEO, and original founder, rebought MoviePass out of bankruptcy. And he kind of understood that in order for this product to be reintroduced to the market, it had to be different, and it had to be sustainable in a way that it wasn't previously. So they kind of decided to do more of a tiered structure of the product offering. So rather than a single price point of $10 a month, we changed the subscription to be $10, $20, $30, or $20, $30, $40 based on what area of the country they live in. For example, like movie tickets in like Wichita might be cheaper than tickets in New York. So it's kind of based on your area. It's a multitude of different factors. Again, with each subscription, customers are given a certain number of credits that they can apply to a movie. So instead of like, however many movies you might want to see in a month, we're kind of, corralling customers a little bit more just so that we can keep an eye on our margins and we can, make a brand promise, but not blow ourselves out of the water by over promising and under delivering, which I think is what happened with MoviePass 1. I think, take 2 with a little bit more caution, a little bit more mindfulness. And, I think it's difficult to balance that with the customer expectation that has been made for better or worse with MoviePass 1. I think I might be jumping the gun here a little bit, but I think in my first couple of months at MoviePass, when we were getting new customers in and we were getting returning customers, and there were a lot of people who were complaining that they liked MoviePass 1 better because of, the different product offerings. I think they maybe saw greater value in that first iteration. And it was always confusing to me because I was like, I'd read those emails and I'd be like, so you preferred like the fraud? Like all of these people were like horribly defrauded. And like, we'd be getting simultaneous messages of people being like, you owe me this much money, like people who were really, really upset about getting, and rightfully so, about putting their trust and their money into this company for it to kind of fall apart and then to come back, we were struggling a lot with whether the customer expectations.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about that, like, especially the experience of the legacy customers who were loyal fans of MoviePass 1 And then they were excited for it to come back, but experiencing something different that was ultimately better for both sides, just in the fact that it is sustainable for MoviePass. So for MoviePass to exist, you need to have a different type of offering, but where customer expectations were kind of set by V1. And then how did you actually go about resetting those expectations? Like what were some of the tactics or approaches that you took to those customers that had been there before?
It's very difficult. I think you spoke briefly to brand trust kind of going into this, and a lot of that, and I don't envy marketing for, the amount of lift that they had to do to kind of reestablish ourselves in the marketplace as not only like a viable product, but a trustworthy brand. Like they had their work kind of cut out for them. So I took a lot of cues from them for the most part, of how much I could and couldn't say, of how much I could and could not promise. Like the product is obviously different. And when it launched, it was, I think, less than a perfect offering too. It was kind of bare bones. And there were a lot of features that are coming out now that weren't present before. And so I think to have customer expectations just kind of A, not met because the product isn't perfectly up to par, and B, not met because they're dealing with a completely different product. I think we all really had our work cut out for us. But I think my approach, I've worked previously in the e-commerce space, and I think customer expectations there are a little bit easier to confront, because customers, want a specific type of physical product and they're looking at it and they're holding it. And there's only so much I, as a CX person, can do to kind of shift the product to meet their expectations or to communicate X, Y, and Z. But I mean, I think the biggest thing has always been just trying to level with the customer from a space of like honesty and empathy, I don't really know what the original version of MoviePass is, but what I know is that this is a new team. This is kind of a new business. I think that's really where I saw the most of these conversations about legacy users coming into the new platform is like, how is this different from MoviePass 1? How is it any different? How is it any better? And it was, from what I could tell, I was like, well, I know that we're not participating in fraudulent business practices. Like that's one of the ways it's like way, way better. And also we have I think a more conscientious team that has really learned some important lessons. But it's difficult sometimes to communicate that with the customer because all they know is that they have to suddenly pay more and suddenly there's this new credit system. And so user education kind of braced with that honesty and that empathy was, I think, just the most important for me to just kind of lay the groundwork for legacy users and new users alike.
Yeah. Just realigning those expectations. I like what you're saying about education. And that can be a tricky thing, especially if they've already learned a version of the business. You almost have to help them to like unlearn what they knew and relearn something else and understand the benefit of that. What were some of the things that you implemented? And I'm open to hearing both what worked and what didn't work in terms of kind of that re-education of your customers.
Yeah. So I think, with the team as small as it is, I kind of took on a lot of that education myself. I'd never worked at a company before. Like the CRM that we have is called Customer. And I never worked with a CRM that allowed us to like publish a knowledge base. Like I don't even believe that, to my knowledge, I don't think a knowledge base existed in our system before I arrived. And so kind of first things first was like, as I was learning the product, for the first time, I was like, okay, I can take all of my own inexperience and what I'm currently learning about how the product functions, what the customer journey looks like. I can take all of these new learnings and just translate them into a brand new knowledge base and going to make that accessible in its own help center. I'm going to make that accessible in the app itself. And it was, I think, I always think of knowledge bases as kind of living, breathing documents. So they change as the product changes. It grows, it lessens in some spaces. You have to continually prune it. But in addition to that as well, I think I also took on rebuilding and reaccumulating knowledge on the website directly. We have a very, very small team. I think currently we're like maybe 9 or 10 people. Marketing is busy working on acquisition and growth. And so, there were all of these parts of the website that looked old and clunky and were full of old information prior to when the app launched nationwide. So I was like, I can do this. Like, like I can learn, Wix and figure out how to like put together, an FAQ page or put together just any kind of page that will provide customers with more information. Because from what we can tell, based on our analytics, like the majority of people who sign up are signing up through the website. So when they go there, how do we make sure that the website is optimized to provide them with the best, most coherent, most up-to-date information? And, does that look like, I think, I had a lot of conversations with marketing and with, other stakeholders in the company about, does that look like, just having conversations about how to maintain customer attention. Because for me personally, I don't mind reading a chunk of text of what I need to know. But a lot of people, we're in the like attention marketplace. It's all about like putting together cute graphics or putting together like videos that will explain everything you need to know in less than a minute, which is difficult for me as someone who is obviously very verbose and like wants to get into the granularity. Like I joke all the time that I'm like, I could be a technical writer. I could explain how to like put together a computer probably with the level of detail.
That's part of the role of a CX leader. Like is what you're explaining, you had to kind of take on that role of marketing in a way where, I mean, in some companies, marketing might do this, in some companies, product marketing might do this. But like in this situation, you're like, I know these customers need this information or else they're going to completely swamp my team with asking it. And it is not scalable for us to do that. So I'm going to get into the weeds. And then you're also highlighting something that's really important, which is, I mean, I can attest to my own attention span, which is next to zero. So if I have to read more than 2 lines, I am lost and I'm just frustrated and I want someone to tell me what to do. So simplifying those details it's a massive challenge. How did you go about really doing that and creating a knowledge base that was like quick and easy to understand?
Yeah, I mean, I think was most important for me, because when I started, the amount of like information, like knowledge transfer that was just kind of like thrown at me was unbelievable. And it was insane too, because I started and then like 2 days later we went on a company retreat. So I was like staying up in upstate New York with all these people I never met before, while also trying to learn my role, like trying to steal people's time to be like, I need you to explain what this is to me so I can like start doing my job, even though I have no idea what I'm doing. There was not a lot of like proper training at all. And so I was like, okay, how can I understand this information? What's the best way for me to do that? And what really helped was kind of mapping out the customer journey and how the product is used in every single one of those steps. So what's the first step? What's the first thing what's the first thing I see when I open the app? How do I navigate to do the most basic function? How do I navigate to make a reservation on the app? How do I essentially just kind of really what it came down to was, as I'm learning the app, what's the easiest way for me to understand what I need to do? And how do I make that as universal as possible? How do I break that down to, someone who has never even owned an iPhone before?
Did they have a customer journey map for you to like work from, or were you building that from scratch?
I was kind of building that from scratch, because I think that they kind of had the basics of like, this is what the app does. This is kind of like, these are its functions and its features. This is how a customer might interact with the app. But as far as like really solidifying what steps the customer might take and where those pain points and those friction points might be, which is also a way, like for me personally, as I'm navigating the app, I'm like, what do I not immediately understand? Boom, that's a pain point. How do I add information for this specifically, knowing that like the likelihood of customers, like I think the biggest thing when mapping out a customer journey is being like, is don't assume that what you know and intuit immediately is what other people know and intuit immediately.
I'm like ringing my pretend bell right now, like ding, ding, ding. This the absolute most essential thing that I see. I'm a customer experience consultant and I coach a lot of customer experience leaders. This is the number one mistake that companies make, in my opinion, is assuming we know what the customer is thinking. And the process of going through a customer journey map is so essential. And it is not only for product teams, it is 100% for all teams who are thinking about the customer, which is probably everyone in the company to some extent. And really walking through, as you said, those pain points, the opportunities to improve. What are the touch points that we're having? How can we make this better for them? And then actually validating the assumptions that we make. Because like you just said, you can assume what they're thinking and feeling, but until we actually take the next step of going to ask them and take those things that we think we're assuming and acknowledge they are assumptions, but let's turn those into questions. And then let's go and ask those questions so that we really can know if we're on the mark or we're not. Like I've been in companies where we are building products because we think those products are cool. And that is not the same as your customer thinking it's cool because you are not your customer. Sometimes you
Unfortunately.
are. Sometimes you are. But as you just said, I'm sure you have, elderly people that are using MoviePass because they like to go, watch movies in the matinees and whatever. Like and then you have really young people. It really runs the gamut. And so you need to check all those segments and see how are they experiencing this? Because it is not the same for everyone. So for everyone listening, underscoring, you can assume all day, but you will not know until you ask.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make an incredible point because there are certainly elderly people who are in our, customer base who, we're trying to troubleshoot an app with them. We're trying to troubleshoot a piece of technology and we're like, can you send us a screenshot of what you're seeing on your end? And they're like, I have no idea how to do that. And so you're just like, crap. Like, so what do I do? Like, how are we going to be able to do this?
Now it's just like pure tech support,
Exactly. And, just a lot of people too, we made an update to the app, trying to really motivate customers to check in prior to swiping their card at the theater, since we were seeing a lot of declines of people who were like, just kind of getting the card and just swiping it and being like, why am I experiencing a decline? And it's like, well, you have to make a reservation before you check. Like it's, it's similar to what the actual movie, there's steps involved. And so when we made the change to like the check-in process on the app, we added this new feature where it's kind of like, it's a pulsing button that says like, unlock your card, to kind of motivate people to be like, oh, that's the next step. When we did that, when we introduced that language of unlock your card, we did see a decrease in the number of people who were experiencing declines as a result of not checking in prior to swiping their card. There was also a high degree of confusion of people being like, is my card locked? Like, why does it tell me I need to do this? Like, is there something wrong with my card? Can you help me unlock it? And us being like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes total sense. Like if you were just kind of not, if you had seen a button that said check in before, and now you're seeing a button that says unlock your card, I'm like, I think it created a lot of panic for people that we didn't really anticipate. Because that's a similar case where we're like, oh, we're going to make this so much easier for people. It's going to be so much clearer for what, the steps they need to take to get to their movie. And it's like, oh, actually, this might be hugely confusing for people who are just kind of, who are, past users who are just waking up, or people who are like super, like maybe a little bit paranoid about what's going on with their app. So listening to the tickets. Like I had just said, go and speak to your customers and get that feedback. And sometimes, often you don't even need to because they're coming to tell you. I mean, I'm always an advocate of both. Listen to the tickets, listen to the problems that they're bringing your way, and then also go and ask questions to validate your assumptions. But, in this case, you did something that you assumed was the right language, that was clear, and then you find out it's not. And it's all trial and error. It's all iterating on
how do we make this as easy as possible for as many people as possible? And again, even if you use your product and you are a customer, you are not representative of every person and every type of person who is going to be using your product. I wanted to ask you a little bit about cross-functional collaboration, because of course, in a customer experience role, you're receiving information and you're receiving products and changes and all of this from other teams, and you're also giving information. And so how have you gone about really creating those relationships internally so that you can understand what's coming down the pike, so you can improve the knowledge base, for example, as well as be prepared for tickets that are coming in?
You know, in every company that I've been in, I've always been super obsessed with the product people, like especially working in e-commerce and wellness. I'm always like, every company that I've ever worked at, the marketing team they're all like geniuses and they're all really creative and they get to work with like beautiful colors all day. And I'm kind of like a magpie. So I kind of automatically want to make relationships with those people because I want to see what they do and I want to learn how they do it. But really, I had my work cut out for me at MoviePass because the team is so small. There's nothing that can really happen that somebody doesn't know about, which like I can't imagine. I've worked in startup spaces for my entire career, and it's always been that small, close-knit feeling where like anything happens, somebody knows about it, or, you know, the delay is less than 24 hours to find something out. Actually, what's most important is logistics, or what's most important is our Amazon business. And so I don't feel that I have ever had to advocate in that capacity with the MoviePass team, because we all kind of have an understanding that there are two prongs to the business. There is the product itself, the app, and the customer experience. Those are kind of like the baseline. And so with that understanding that anything that dev does, anything that the tech team produces is going to have an immediate effect on the people that I interact with every day, will have an immediate effect on my agents and my leads, because they have to learn a brand new aspect of the product. There is kind of an immediate understanding.
What are some ways that you ensure that you're communicating clearly and you're informing everyone of what's happening in the customer's experience?
I think a lot of people that don't, I think mostly everybody, the only people in my opinion that like really know CX are CX people. It's a very specific, it's just powder keg of knowledge. So I think being really, really clear about, here are KPIs that are important to me. What are the KPIs, going to key stakeholders, going to, dev, going to marketing, going to the COO and the CEO, and being like, what do y'all want to see represented? I guarantee that there is a way for me to extract that information from the reporting that I do and to serve it up to you. What's important to you? Because if, for example, our CEO, the only thing that he really, truly cares about from the CX perspective is what are the response times on chat? Chat is our main contact driver, and he is really only concerned with how long did it take one of our agents to get back to a customer via chat. That's his golden goose. And so for me, I'm like, well, there's all these other factors involved and all these other things that I'm really interested in discussing, but it really comes down to what's most important to the rest of the team, and how can I make that as clear and concise as possible. When I have feedback for the dev team, it's all about, how many customers are experiencing the specific pain point with the product. They're all about, how many instances can you replicate it on your side? How many users are affected? Give me all of their information. So it's going to a specific stakeholder and being like, what kind of information and in what style do you need from me? And how can I best serve what you need from the CX department so that you can best serve the CX department? So, it's very circular in that regard, but you have to be very specific, because a lot of people want a lot of different things. For marketing, it's like, oh, this person's talking on social about this. It's a lot more, there's a lot more of a human aspect of is there buzz around this feature? Is there buzz around this kind of complaint? So just kind of knowing who you're talking to and how best to deliver that information, I think
Yeah.
has always served me right.
I always like to think of my peers in an organization as another customer. And we can also segment those internal customers. Like, what does sales need? What is sales focused on? What are they thinking about? What are they worried about? How can I support them in that and really build trust with that team by showing up as a teammate? Same thing goes for marketing. Same thing goes for product. Like, I ask them for feedback. I work to understand what their pain points are. And then I work with my team to ease any friction that we're having with them. I think it's so common that customer experience or customer success teams are feeling like a little taken for granted or not fully listened to, or that, you know, they're just beholden to whatever product and marketing and sales decide to do today. And we need to like pick up the pieces and deal with it. And, you know, I speak to a lot of CX leaders, obviously, and it's, you know, there's a lot of frustration and a lot of resentment that gets held in the way that we're kind of at the end of the line, and then we hold all the pieces that weren't really thought of earlier, and have to deal with all of those issues, really. But I've found it's been really helpful for me to flip the script and take my customer-centric mindset and the empathy that I have for customers, which, you know, great customer experience leaders and employees, people who are in CX, we're all really empathetic, and that's our strong suit. And so taking that empathy and actually applying it to our peers can do wonders. Like I was speaking to a woman earlier today, and we were talking about in one of my last roles when we had a sales team that was just really not thinking about retention. And it was my main metric was retention. And I realized that a lot of people were leaving in like the critical first 90 days. Of course, I take responsibility for that, but also we need to get the sales team on board here because they're onboarding people incorrectly and they're setting wrong expectations. And so like, how do we approach that? The number one thing I did was just build a relationship. How can I make sure that that sales rep feels the impact of what they're doing to their peer by not setting a correct expectation or just skipping over some of the onboarding because they don't have time? If it's actually a human relationship between sales and customer experience, then we're all really going to benefit. And
Exactly.
That's always my approach, is like, how can we create a more human relationship and bring empathy into the picture so that our sales and marketing and product counterparts are actually like can feel and empathize with us. And it goes both ways.
We've got some cohesion, you know, because I've absolutely worked in spaces where it's like, oh, I didn't know that this sale was suddenly launching. How much is off, and like what products, and just kind of like okay, like I didn't know this was happening today.
I just got a ticket about a sale that we're offering, and they're asking me about the terms and conditions. Like, what is that?
And I'd be like, you know, just going back to the customer, that's a great question. I have no idea, you know, like, great question. Let me go ask my teammates. But no, I absolutely get it too, because I think, you know, recently MoviePass has kind of been through quite a few iterations and new product launches. And, you know, in my role, I think what would have been really useful, because, you know, we push out these product updates and there's all of this, you know, rigorous testing that happens before the new product hits the market. But, you know, things slip through the cracks because it is tech and it is imperfect, and there are plenty of edge cases. But with the, you know, the cadence of product updates happening since like October, there has really been no time to sit down and do a post-mortem between CX and dev and be like, these are the bits and pieces that are still breaking. We still see customers with this issue. You know, gifting is a huge example. We launched being able to gift subscriptions to customers right in time for the holidays. And it was a big rush to push that out. And I think, you know, as successful as it was, and as exciting as it was to push out that product update, like, we're still kind of seeing issues with customers purchasing gifts and not getting the code sent to them or getting multiple emails. And it's certainly not a big enough problem to impact like a wide swath of our customer base. But it is an issue that's going to continue to happen because gifting was launched, perennially. You can buy, I'm sure there were people who bought a gift subscription for Valentine's Day. Someone's birthday is every day of the year. So it's something that's going to continue to happen. And I think that there is a temptation to be frustrated with my teammates when that happens, when I'm like, we push this out and now that it's done, we're moving on to the next thing. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of consideration for the collateral of customers that are left behind. Because, truthfully, maybe it's 20, 30, 40, 50 customers. And so if it's not impacting the full customer base, I think dev is very much of the mindset of like, oh, okay, then it's not catastrophic. Like we're not facing like an app outage or a card outage or anything like that. But to me, 3 customers experiencing an issue is a problem for me because I'm like, if I'm thinking about the percentage of people that actually do contact us, like that 3 is probably more like 300 of people who are experiencing the issue and not reaching out. But at the same time, I'm like, well, who sets I'm sure it's not the dev team who's setting this cadence that makes them, work however many long hours. Like this is kind of like this isn't them being like, oh, we don't care that customers are experiencing this issue. Of course they care. It's like, well, they're kind of being pushed onto the next thing and onto the next thing. And there's not a process in place for, 30 days out from a product launch, 60 days, 90 days out. What problems are we still experiencing? Where do the holes exist that we have to patch? There's not that process in place because we are working in a very dynamic, marketplace, and we're working in our business dynamic. The movie industry never takes a day off, and neither do we. So it's just, how do we carve out that space and time to really connect, like you said, peer to peer, to make sure that we're working cohesively and we can kind of navigate those feelings of resentment and those feelings of being left out and being left to deal with, the collateral.
And take a moment to look back and say, here are things that have cost us a lot of time. So how can we adjust that moving forward and save that time? I mean, I think you bring up a really good point that I hear from a lot of customer experience leaders, that if 3 people are reaching out about this one thing, we know that there are more. And it's inquantifiable. We can't quantify how many people are having this issue because they haven't told us. And we can maybe go into the product and see things, but typically that data isn't, those wires haven't been run, that data isn't fully accessible. So, how do we navigate that? It's a really difficult thing because we also don't want to take up time from the product team if it's not something that we can prove is really an issue. And I think this is where intuition really comes in around, we know, the customer experience team knows the customer best. We hear from them day in and day out. We feel the pains that they feel much more viscerally than any other team. And I've definitely had experiences where, we do a new product launch or, update. We send out an update that maybe I didn't even know about. And then we start getting a bunch of tickets coming in. And I'm like, this feels fishy. And going with that feeling of this feels fishy, I need to look into this more. I need to talk to my pals on the product team to see what changed because something's going on here and I'm putting my finger in the air. Yes, it is not like a true science, but I know my people and I know that this is something to look into, and that has led me to dead ends. And it's also led me to unraveling really big issues that are impacting a lot of customers and maybe some like really key metrics that we have. And like, I'll give an example of this. Like when I was working at a company called Too Good To Go, we're launching in the US, it's a European company. We're launching in the US and we were really struggling with our retention metrics. And those retention metrics, we couldn't figure out what was going on. And it was a very complex problem. Like there were many things at play here. And so we're just peeling away the onion and saying, okay, like here's an issue, here's an issue, here's an issue. And something that we kept hearing from our customers, not a lot of them, but many of them and this was a B2B business, a lot of them weren't getting paid. We were a marketplace. So we were accepting transactions and we were paying out the businesses that had been utilizing the platform. They were like, we're not getting paid. We're confused. And we're like, that doesn't make sense that you wouldn't be getting paid because we take your banking information at onboarding. And then we would go in eventually and we're like, okay, there's enough of these that it feels wrong. And the product team says there should be no issues. The sales team says there should be no issues. But when we actually looked at it, like a third of our customers had just never gotten around to inputting their banking information because they weren't forced to in the product. And there was no one checking the sales team to make sure that that was happening. And so it was like, kind of everyone was telling us it's not an issue. But when we looked into it, we realized that like, actually, there is a big issue here. And we, I mean, ironically, didn't have the data to really clearly show us this is how many people don't have their banking information inputted. It was just like, but there wasn't anything clear. So we really had to dig for that one. But we wouldn't have known if we didn't follow our gut in these customers are like, there is actually a problem. They're not just complaining or they're not just confused or they just like didn't look at their bank statement correctly.
Exactly.
Which were some of the things that people were telling us was wrong.
That's crazy. Because I think too, it's like that. What's always difficult is a lot of people, and I think a lot of people on certain teams, and I think not out of genuine malice, but out of kind of like maybe just general exhaustion, really do want to chalk a lot of problems up to user error, which is very common. Like humans traditionally make mistakes. So like, I get it. But there is a lot of, and I think my own agents have kind of internalized that attitude as well. So they're like, oh, the customer must be, messing up in that way. Like there's no way that this problem could be happening or that this could be happening so often. And I think what you described in your experience is this capacity for like goodwill for the customer of like, I don't think this person is, complaining just to complain. I don't think they're like just trying to get something. They're trying to grift me in some way or another. Hearing what the customer's saying and being like, okay, I'll take this in good faith and see what I can do with this information. Whereas just kind of writing them off as like, oh yeah, they didn't read their bank statement correctly, or like they must be, wrong somehow, because it's certainly not the product. It's like, it could be. Stranger things have happened.
Totally. And it's especially hard to do that when you have someone who's like yelling at you through email. This isn't working. Why is this product so stupid? And you're like, okay, we have to acknowledge that this person is just angry and frustrated and they've been hurt in some way, or they feel like they've been hurt in some way by us. What's really happening here? And like being able to, and this is, one of the, I think the toughest and most essential skills for anyone working in customer experience, anyone that's working with customers day in and day out, is to really put aside our defensiveness that naturally comes up when someone is angry at us and really work to understand what is truly happening underneath here. What are the feelings that this person is like truly feeling, or the needs that are not actually being met? And what's actually wrong here, because it can be difficult. And I know I've had to have many conversations with like customer support team members where they're upset because someone's been, yelling at them in all caps all day, sending them like 10 emails back and forth. And there's something else here. And we need to it's our job to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's just a less like a golden rule for CX, and also just like life. It's like my therapist always says, like, oh, you're feeling this vitriolic emotion. Like, what is the wish there? Like, what do you wish would happen? When you're feeling this and feeling that. But, speaking to the defensiveness thing, I think that's been a really huge obstacle to overcome with MoviePass 2.0 is that we certainly were getting, the agents that were working when MoviePass 2.0 launched on the wait list. So from January to May, I didn't know these agents until I started in May. They had been dealing with like extremely vitriolic, angry, incensed, frustrated, betrayed customers who were kind of being reintroduced to this new product, but who were also, had felt these were also non-customers who had felt badly burned by MoviePass, what went down with MoviePass One with Mitch and Ted. And, we're not fully understanding that this was kind of a brand new company, or maybe thinking that this was kind of just MoviePass One rearing its ugly head again. And so there was a lot of, a lot of anger and a lot of frustration, in some cases, a lot of abusive language of people who were demanding their money, the money that they had invested in the company, who were demanding refunds. And I think it was really difficult for I know it was really difficult for my agents, because they were just kind of facing that energy day in and day out. And that can really, really wear on you. Like I can't imagine what happens for certain brands. Like, I was working at a wellness company, like a health and wellness company for period products when the whole Thinks scandal happened. And like with, certain like materials in their period underwear. And I was like, my heart is truly going out to the people that work on that support team, because they are I'm sure they're being absolutely bombasted by, all types of language. And so, I think it's difficult because, you want to meet the customer where they are, you want to put aside that defensiveness. But I think what I've also, really instilled in my agents is like, we're not going to tolerate abuse. Which I think some CEOs and some managers and some leaders are like, they're like fine with that. They're okay with their agents weathering that kind of language if it means that the customer ends up happy or ends up getting what they want at the end. But it's like, no, that cannot stand. It's like, you don't reward that type of behavior at all.
Completely. The important thing here, I think, is making your team feel really safe. And that's the role of the leader, to create that safe environment and make sure that people are known, or make sure that people know that they are respected, like that they have respect from their peers, from the company that they're working for, and that they're doing God's work speaking to these people who are really angry. And, I think there's ways that we can educate our team on how to talk people down. And there's also ways that we can create barriers where we say, okay, if this type of language is being used, this is where it comes off your plate. Like I've done this with my team before. It's like, if someone is swearing at you over the phone or over email, we will respectfully end the conversation and pass them on to someone else. I'm like, I'll take that. Or my team lead will take that, and just give the team that is in the trenches day in and day out a break from that type of language, because it really, when we think about the whole and all the customers, it actually does everyone a disservice to be exposing our team to that consistently. Yeah. And I mean, I totally hear you in companies. Like, I'm sure if you were working at MoviePass during the bankruptcy, and I'm not exactly sure what happened to those customers or what went down, but I'm sure it was not pretty. And yeah, our hearts go out to those leaders and teams who had to deal with those types of issues. Couple last questions for you, because I know we're coming up on time here. So we always like to ask, what is one experience that you've had with a brand or a company recently that left you impressed?
Honestly, and this has been kind of my go-to answer because it just kind of continues to happen. But I have a cat, so we have, as anyone viewing has seen. But I also have moved around a bunch in New York since I moved here, and I am famous for not ever updating addresses on shipping subscriptions. So Chewy has come through for me time and time again, and really displayed some incredible customer experience. So if they've shipped me a $50 bag of cat food to a location that is across the city from me, and I'm like, okay, I don't really want to interact with my old roommates and pick this up, it's already shipped, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, this is already shipped to the wrong address, and I'm not really expecting them to do anything, I'm maybe to just refund me or give me a credit, but I've interacted with them, and they've there have been times where they've just sent me the food to my address, which I wasn't expecting. I think my expectations of customer experience or just kind of like human kindness in a lot of ways is very low. So when something like that happens, I'm like, oh, this was so convenient. They were completely understanding. And now like the work that I have had to do to correct this issue is minimal. They obviously have a huge level of respect and consideration for their customers because they're like, yeah, we'll just do this. Like, what is it to us to just take care of this for you and make you happy? And that's fabulous customer support right there.
Yeah. I've heard people say chewy to this answer many, many times. And I think it really shows the amount of empathy and care and consideration that they have for their customer, and also how they want to make things easy for their customers. Like what you're saying, you know, they're like, technically it was your fault. And like, this is costing them money, but they know in the value of your long-term, customer value. And they're really, you know, they show that. They show you that they care. And I'm sure you will be loyal forever, just like everyone who said this to me before, because I've heard amazing stories from Chewy. So if you're listening and you have a pet, definitely try Chewy on. Last question for you. Question for you. What is one piece of advice that you think every customer experience leader should hear?
Take care of yourself. I think the type of people that go into CX are, you know, not necessarily like always people pleasers to a certain extent, but they're people that overextend themselves because they're looking after not only the brand, keeping the brand's interest at heart, their, you know, co-stakeholders' interests at heart, their agents, their leads, their co-managers. It just, you know, there's a huge hierarchy beneath them. And then beyond that, the entirety of the customer base. So there's a lot of pressure to maintain. There's a lot of pressure to make sure that information, just to do the job, there's a lot of pressure. And I think a lot of customer experience managers or people in customer experience leaders in general, they can burn out pretty quickly, not just because of the nature of the job, but just because of the type of people they are. Very type A in my experience. So just to remember to take care of yourself and to fill your cup. I'm notorious. This is me certainly talking out of my ass because I haven't taken a vacation in a billion years. I don't think I've ever taken a vacation, but it shows, you know, your ability to be there and to advocate for your agents and for your brand and for your customers, you know, is of utmost importance. And you can't do that if you can't advocate for yourself. So
you can't pour from an empty cup. And if we keep pouring for all the people that we are supporting, we have to be filling our own cup. It is essential. It is like the number one piece. That is the number one piece of leadership advice that I give my coaching clients. I'll always ask if they're really stressed, are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you exercising? Are you having fun? Because if you're not doing those four things, and fun is important, like you got to go out and let loose and have some time with your friends and people you love and just like enjoy life a little bit, because those are all the resources to help us refill a cup so that we can actually keep pouring from it.
Absolutely.
Well, Frances, it's been so wonderful having you on the show. Thank you for telling us the story of MoviePass and really building back up that customer trust. So really appreciated you coming on the show, and I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Have a lovely rest of your day. It was great talking to you.
You as well. Talk to you later. Salesforce Data Cloud is a hyperscale data platform built right into Salesforce. Data Cloud helps you to better know your customers, act on AI in the flow of work, and enrich your data with open access. To learn more, visit salesforce.com/products/data.